Welcome to the Books Between Friends podcast.
3 lifelong friends,
one shared obsession.
Books.
From epic fantasy to page-turning thrillers.
We dive into the stories we love
And the ones we just can't stop talking about.
So take a seat,
Grab a drink,
and get cozy. Welcome back, friends. Speaking of cozy, what's your cup of cozy today? I'm drinking a glass of Pinot Noir. It's a new bottle that I'm trying, so I'm really excited to drink that today. Steph, Ethan, what is your cup of cozy?
So I am having I've poured a can of Hopadillo IPA into a nice glass. And so I love anything from the Carback Brewery based in Houston. And Hopadillo is my favorite IPA. So yes, that's what I'm having.
Nice.
and I am having let me see. This is a Valley Mills Vineyards Garnacha, which is the vineyard where we got married, actually.
That's right.
And it's my favorite wine from there. And it's peppered with a little bit of the cork that I broke off of the bottle trying to get it open.
Oh, hashtag
So- Oh my
relatable.
I was going to say, the amount of times that's happened to me.
Yum.
It's like fiber, right?
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
yeah, of course. It's good for you.
So I have a question
Okay.
for you. So outside of Onyx Storm, I've been reading the Court of Thorns and Roses series, right? Another
Finally,
Sarah just
yes.
I know. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses a while back, and then at the end of last year is when I started picking up A Court of Mist and Fury, and then I started this year off with A Court of Wings and Ruin, and then across A Court of Frost and Starlight. That one was all right, and then I just ended. I finished up today, actually, the day that we're recording, A Court of Silver Flames, and I have to say, I did not anticipate that one. I feel like this is a bit of a hot take from what I've seen on is that people don't really care for this one too much just because it's mostly from, it's not from Feyre's point of view.
Right.
But this one was my favorite in the series. So I liked this one quite a bit. I think the reason I liked it so much more is because you delve much more into the magic system in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I loved that aspect of it. But this brings me to my question. Should I delve more into the Sarah J. Maas world? I read Throne of Glass, just the first book, right? Not the whole series. I read that book years ago now. So is it worth it to go back to that series?
Oh,
what do you think?
Oh my God.
Of course.
It's like required reading. If you're
It really
reading
is.
Sarah J. Maas, you have to read Throne of Glass. This is I'm not even kidding you. This is life-altering
It
content.
really is. It is. It is.
Life-altering content.
Yes. And you think like reading Throne of Glass, you think
Like
it's
it'll
like
just take over your whole entire life.
it
while you
really
read it.
does.
It will become my personality.
My God.
Yeah.
We were obsessed. I mean, like, I don't think we slept very long because we were so obsessed with like getting to the next story. And you think like you read Throne of Glass, you're like, oh, it's just about like this assassin. Like, holy shit,
No,
does it
it's
change?
so much more.
It becomes like everything that you think that a fantasy book should be. Like, honestly,
Everything,
you need
yeah.
to read the series. Like, if you don't, I don't know that I can call you my best
Yeah.
friend anymore.
Well, that's rude.
It's
Just
required reading for if you want to be a part of this podcast.
That's true. That's true.
Well, then I'll take it a little more seriously then, I guess. Okay, so
Oh, seriously, it's so good.
It is really good.
I cannot say enough good things about that series. It's one of my favorites.
Yep.
It doesn't knock Harry Potter off of my number one spot, but it's up there with Harry Potter.
I also say
Okay.
like it reaches a really good turning point at Heir of Fire. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Heir of
Yeah.
Fire. Like
Yeah, I would
that-
say so.
I would say like right there, that book, you will not be able to put it down.
okay. Well, that's good to know.
So
to know.
good,
So
Ethan.
it looks like I'm picking up Throne of Glass.
And
so-
actually,
Sorry.
Actually, Jen, we're coming up on a year since we started our
Yes.
read of that series, right?
That's right. We read it in April of last year.
We read it last April, and it took
Yep.
us 1 month to read all 8 books.
Oh, well, I won't be doing that, but
No, that's insanity, and
It was
it's
insanity.
totally valid for you not to try to beat that timeline.
I remember
No.
I remember reading the last book, Kingdom of Ash, and I won't say any spoilers, but I remember texting Stephanie. It was so late that night, and I was bawling, and I was like, "Have you finished it yet?" It's so good.
I remember. I think I finished it the next day, and like I literally just stared at a wall for like 2 hours, contemplating everything that just happened. I was okay, when you talk about like a book hangover, I've never experienced anything of the sort.
Yes. And honestly, we didn't know where to go from there. Like, we didn't know what series to read next. We really tried to read other books and we just couldn't. Like,
I think I took like a 2 month
reading
pause
hiatus
on any books. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, we couldn't read after that. Like, literally, it was just so bad. That's how good that was.
I couldn't process words on a page after that.
Pick up a different book. I don't even remember what I read after Throne of Glass. Like, that's how like, oh my God, it left us. Like, it was,
yeah.
Okay. Anyways,
so
sorry.
Excited for you to read it and for it to change your life like it did to us.
I hope we didn't overhype it too.
Yeah. No, I don't think there's, I don't think.
Okay, we needed to just stop overhyping it for him so he can actually get
just
into
read it and report back.
Oh yeah, I'll be making checkpoints to report back.
Thank you. Thank you. Much needed. Thank you. We're so excited to dive into part 9 of Onyx Storm, where we will discuss chapters 49 through 54. If you didn't catch our first 8 episodes of Onyx Storm, go listen to it now, then come back and join us for this episode.
All right, you guys. So once again, fair warning. If you're listening to this episode, we're assuming that you've read all the way through chapter 54 of Onyx Storm. So there will be spoilers in this episode. But before we dive into the next 6 chapters, let's catch up to where we're at in Onyx Storm so far. After Riddick realized the truth about Xaden, he and Violet argued, and Riddick made her draw the line for when Xaden goes too far, and Violet agreed that if he hurt her or any of them, that would be the line. Riddick also told Xaden that they have to tell Rhee and Sawyer too, so Violet would have more people on her side to watch out for her in case he goes too far, and Xaden agreed to that as well. They decide to skip going to Loisem and head back to Viscayeth, but their trip back was suspiciously uneventful. And when they arrived, General Atos informed them that while they were gone, Suniva had fallen to a venom attack, and Queen Mariah was killed, making Takaris king of Pormiel, and putting Kat closer in line to the throne. He also delivered a note to Violet with another cryptic message from Theophany. At Battle Brief, Professor Devra broke down the Battle of Suniva. Venin hid within the clouds of a storm, which allowed them to overtake the city undetected and burned it down. They could only have done this with Theophany's power to wield lightning. Also, the attack happened just 2 hours after a shipment of alloy daggers had been delivered to the city, confirming that there's a rat within their ranks. When Devra asked them to strategize how they could fight back, they realized that their only shot against Theophany is Violet. But Theophany has had centuries to hone her power, and Violet has only had months. When their inevitable showdown happens, will Violet be ready? Meanwhile, the Orician wards are deteriorating faster than expected. Wyvern have been breaching the border and making it closer to Orisha on a daily basis. They may not even have a month before the wards completely fail. So Felix has come to Viscayeth to help Violet train. And things are also deteriorating in Violet's personal life. And Darna has been hiding out since they returned, and Xaden has also been keeping his distance from her. His hope for a cure is clearly slipping away. And to make matters worse, during an argument with the Cenarium about opening the Tyrish borders to civilians, Lynx, a first-year rider, started wielding shadows. What does that mean for Xaden, now that he's not their generation's shadow wielder? And during their rotation to Orisha for runes training, Brennan told Violet that he knows about Xaden too, and they've been trying everything they can to cure him. And after 73 days of not channeling, Xaden feels a glimmer of hope that he's at least stable for now. Violet and Xaden have finally allowed themselves to be intimate again. Now let's dive in to what happens next.
We are getting so close to the end, you guys, and I don't know that I'm ready for this. I feel like all the answers we've gotten so far have just not been helpful, and I fear for what's coming. I almost feel like a big bomb is about to drop, and I can't figure out what it is yet. These chapters, though, man, they freaking ended on a devastating note. And honestly, I don't know if I'm ready to discuss that. But let's get into it anyways. So we won't spend too much time on the sex scene itself. But I do want to touch on the fact that required a lot of trust between Xaden and Violet. Because I know that like Xaden has been keeping his distance from her for a reason, right? But like he felt confident enough to fully lose control around her and not channel. And thankfully at the end of that, he actually didn't channel. And so he kind of felt that glimmer of hope that he's stable enough to keep control to where he doesn't have the need to channel. What do you think that means? Do you think that he'll be able to stay this way for a while?
Well, okay. So after you guys made me start doubting Brennan, I started doubting every single person in this book. So I was reading this chapter with like a hell of a lot of suspicion. Like, what do you mean 73 days? How is that any different from channeling at all on like day 0? I'm not buying it. I don't know. It's weird. I'm questioning it.
I think it's totally weird. I even wrote down, I was like, listen, I did not pay much attention to this chapter because it's them fooling around again. And I've been reading A Court of Silver Flames, right? There's a lot of that in that book. And then I got to this chapter and I was like, enough already. Oh my gosh. I'm so tired of reading about sex. Goodness. But that being said, I also didn't pay much attention to this chapter because I was still hung up on the way that the previous chapter ended. There's a line that that Violet says. She comes to the realization, she's like, "Oh, you want me at my full power." And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." And why do we need to verbalize that? And now like this whole scene, the whole 73 days thing, like, or however many days, I was like, that doesn't make sense to me either. Like it's very out of character for Xaden, right? Because he is so dead set on keeping her safe. And I know like everyone has their breaking point, right? Like, and maybe this is his breaking point, but even then, I don't know. It seems weird.
Yeah. Maybe we just were due for another scene with Spice.
I'm not saying that I needed every other chapter because I've honestly really enjoyed this book without it. Like, it's been so fucking good. Yeah. But I'm always down for a nice little spacey chapter. But so I wasn't mad about it. Like,
fine,
you guys
you can
were.
have it, Jen.
But
coming from my favorite book in the ACOTAR series is A Court of Silver Flame. So
right. Yeah. No.
I'm not trying to say I'm not about Spice. I'm just suspicious of this particular Spice.
Like that. It definitely was a very weird interaction between them, and it's kind of like what you guys are saying. Why now? Why all of a sudden are you stable now? And what does that mean for you as Venin? Because you're Venin, no matter what you think you are. So, but I was so excited about this next part because I felt like we all called it. We just didn't know how to put it together. So once we get through, the spicy little chapter that they throw in there, she is having another dream again. And so I mentioned this last time. I thought that these dreams were significant. And honestly, when I read Iron Flame, I didn't pick up on it the first time I read it. I thought that they were just nightmares, recurring nightmares that you're having, obviously, because you just suffered this like huge trauma, which happens to, I think, a lot of us, right? But when I was listening to it, I'm like, why is she putting so much emphasis on this? And obviously now knowing what was going to happen to Xaden turning Venom, I'm like, those dreams they have to mean something, right? And so this chapter starts off with Violet having a dream again. And it's the same one where she's in the middle of the battle with the sage. You know, she sees Drathus in the background. But in the dream, she's reaching down to channel herself. And that's when she realizes, like, oh, that's not my hand. And she realizes she's in a dream and wakes up. And so when she wakes up, Xaden is right next to her having his own nightmare. And so she wakes him up and she thinks, oh, it's the storm. I'm just having a nightmare because of the storm, blah, 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 whatever. And so then Xaden starts to ask her, like, what her dream was about. And so in the middle of all that, before we get into how did he know about this? How does he have knowledge of all these, like, really rare signets? Because turns out that Violet is a dreamwalker, and that's something that Xaden knew existed, but Violet didn't.
Well, so they start talking about the dreams they had and realize that they were having the same dream. In fact, in the same dream. Violet was actually in Xaden's dream.
That's right, yep.
So that's when he brings up, oh, you're a dreamwalker. I have no idea, but like Xaden, this isn't a surprise for me about Xaden that he knows the existence of dreamwalking. He's been leading a revolution in secret for his entire life, basically.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, like, we know this guy has secrets. That's actually been their like original, what's it called, argument.
That's how it started. Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So like, oh my God. Yeah, we all kind of touched on this a little bit. And like, I'm so glad, Jen, that you brought it up, I think, in our Iron Flame episodes. Because I also, when I was reading it for the first time, just kind of like glossed over those parts and didn't think much of those dreams. I was just thinking like, oh, she's having nightmares about Venom because they're scary.
Yeah.
But when you brought it up, and now tying it back to this, that she's a dreamwalker, that means she's been... her second signet has manifested all the way back in Iron Flame.
Yeah.
Right?
And that was after Resin, right?
Yes, right after Resin. And that's so interesting. And like, now I'm locked into these dreams. I'm like analyzing them and rereading them and like taking every word and like just gutting it.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like this is foreshadowing something. I think so. In this dream, I
was going to say, I have a
they're
theory,
outside
but I'll let you
of
finish.
Drathus.
Yeah,
they're outside of Drathus.
I also have a theory. Yeah,
and the original dreams from Iron Flame, they were outside of Biscayeth, and that was the first time that Xaden channeled.
Okay,
but now it's Drathus. And also, the dialogue in this dream is telling me that, like, this is, like, present tense, Xaden has already channeled. He's already Venom. So Xaden tells the sage in the dream, I'm not yours. And he responds, you are ours. So he has already turned, right?
Okay.
And then in the dreams leading up to Biscayeth, he was telling him, you will turn.
That's right.
So it was, like, foreshadowing the future that came to be. He turned. So then Xaden says, you do not have her. And he says, but I will, because you will bring her to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to wonder, like, I think the obvious her in this situation would be Violet.
Right.
But I'm starting to wonder, is it Violet, though? Because at one point in the dream, Xaden looks up to look for her, whoever her is.
Yeah.
So now it's making me think, is it Sigale or is it Andarna?
Yeah, just going off of what you're saying, like, I don't think her is Violet, even though that's what the obvious is, right? Like, the obvious would be Violet. Everybody wants Violet. I mean, Theophany has made it perfectly clear that she wants Violet, but this is a different guy. This is somebody else. I don't think he wants Violet. I think he wants somebody else, but I don't know who that is either. But what I was going to mention from what you were saying about, like, the dialogue between them, the dream always starts off with him about to channel, though. So it's almost like he's reliving the past, but then once they realize it's a dream, then they start having present dialogue. So if you think about it, go back to that dream again. And that's when she was like, oh, I'm reaching down to channel for the first time. So it's like you're reliving the past for a little bit during the dream. But then once that realization hits that you're in the dream and that something is happening, then you start having present tense dialogue. And that's where you kind of foreshadow some of what's happening. At least that's how I picked it up. Because so a theory that I was thinking of when I was reading this is this how Violet will save him? Because she can meddle. Because Xaden tells her that she meddles in the dreams, because he tells her, I was reaching down to channel and I found myself pulling away, because he felt her, I think. And so I'm like, can she meddle? Yeah. So does that mean that she can alter the future by messing with the past? Like, is that how? Because I mean, we already know there's no cure for Xaden, but will she be able to change what happens to him by meddling in these dreams? That's my theory.
I didn't go there with that theory, but I also I think we all picked up on the line where Xaden's like, no, you can meddle in dreams. So not only does she have the ability to dream walk and observe what's going on, she has the ability to influence. So I found that incredibly interesting. I was like, that's pretty freaking cool. I found that because it's still knowledge, right? It's still knowledge. And so when I originally had this theory, I think the way I hit on it, like all three of us did, right? Like we all hit around it, but we never sunk the battleship. I was like, there's a part at the very beginning of this book where she talks about, she realizes that like she passed on a memory or something to Xaden, and they just chalked it up to the bond. But obviously not, right? It has something to do with dream. Like she saw it in a dream or something and then shared it with him, and they thought that was kind of weird. Like, oh, well, that looks familiar. It strikes a chord or something. And so that's what made me think that she was intrinsic. Mm-hmm. And so now Xaden confirms like, oh, it is a type of intrinsic, but it's like even more dangerous. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Great. Another target on Violet's head.
Yeah.
With this one, I thought it was because she's called a warrior, right? The heart of a warrior and the mind of a scribe.
Mind of a scribe. Yeah.
I think this will have something to do with that, right? Where she can influence people in their dreams to get knowledge. So maybe there is a cure. No one has actually written it down or verbalized it. It's only in someone's head. Mm. And that will feed into my other prediction later at the end of this episode. So
okay.
More to come.
This is why I love having these conversations with you guys, because it's like we all thought of something completely different about the fact that she's a dreamwalker, and it's going to end up tying together. I mean, we kind of all called her second Signet, but we couldn't put a name to it, right? And so now it's like we're calling these predictions, and I think in some way they're going to come together, and actually like that's what's going to happen. So I just wanted to take a moment and say I love talking to you guys about this.
Yeah, I do too. Like this has been like such a joy to be able to really deep dive into what I love the most is like reading books, but like it's not just the reading of the book, it's the like dissecting and like discussing and like going over and over it, and it's just so fun. Yeah, agree.
It brings out the reading teacher in me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh yeah.
So as they're talking about, how dangerous this new Signet is, they get interrupted because there is a wyvern attack. And so they all rush outside, start springing into action. And of course, Xaden and Brennan are quickly like back and forth on who's here to fight, who's there, whatever. Where do we need to go? Who needs to go where? And so before they leave and before they go into action, two things happen that I thought are kind of interesting that really haven't like been brought up before. One, Xaden is so set on the fact that Bodhi needs to stay safe because he's like the next in line for Tyrrendor now. And so, like, there is this huge, I mean, I think they've been fighting about this for a bit, but, like, huge conflict between them two because Xaden doesn't want him to fight. Bodhi obviously wants to fight. So, like, he makes Bodhi stay behind. And then the other thing that I thought was super interesting, which is what I want to get into with y'all next, is Eric catching up to Violet. And he says, you have to protect Dune's temple. It's how you save Tyrrendor. And I'm like, what? Just like questioning. And of course, she doesn't stop to listen to him. Like, somebody just comes up to you and tells you, I know how to save Tyrrendor, and you don't stop to listen. Like, you run out. Like, are you kidding me? So I was just like, okay, what's going on here? How does Dune tie into, because obviously they went to Umbriel, which is, the isle that worships Dune. And so there was a lot that was revealed there. And so now it's kind of tying back into this Venin war. And so I'm like, okay, what's happening? I really don't know what's happening. So I don't know what you guys thought about that. So what were y'all's thoughts?
Okay, well, like, I've been seeing Eric as sus ever since he went on that trip to the islands with them, and he somehow knew all of the languages of the islands. Like, I don't know what it means that he said this, or like, but I'm thinking, was he steering her in that direction for a reason? And we'll talk about what happens later, but like, I'm still looking at this with like side eye, like, really suspecting Eric here.
See, I'm not suspecting Eric, because what I thought, where my mind took me, was maybe this is his signet. Like, he has some kind of secret knowledge that that no one else is privy to, because like he only goes to Violet, obviously the only one person that I feel like he can actually trust. So like maybe he's like gaining all of this knowledge, or maybe his second signet has something to do with like, because I mean it goes back to knowing all the languages, right? It's like all of a sudden he knew the languages. Maybe that was his signet because he's getting knowledge, or he just has like an untapped source of knowledge for all sorts of things, and now he knows how to save Tyrrendor, and that's through saving or protecting the Dune Temple. I don't know.
But like earlier, Xaden and Brennan are like strategizing how to defend the city, but
he doesn't trust them.
They're the leadership. So if you have information about how to save Tyrrendor, wouldn't you go to the leaders of Tyrrendor?
Unless his signet is some kind of an intrinsic signet, and he doesn't want people to know about it, because we all know intrinsics get killed.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm also like,
I'm still sus.
I think Eric is sus, but not in a bad way. Like, I think what he's doing is very suspicious, and he's going about it in a suspicious way. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just because I didn't put that together with his signet. I think that would be very interesting. I have suspected that his signet might be knowledge-based like that, or something like that, where he can just touch something and just intuitively know something, right? Like the languages. I thought that was like a good way that he could have been, fluent in all these languages. But to me, I was like, well, maybe this was before I heard your signet theory. I was like, maybe the royals aren't all bad, right? Like maybe the Venin network does go deep, but it's not the royals. And maybe they know something that Violet is not privy to. And so that's how Eric knew. He was like, no, you need to go here. Like, this is what your priority should be. That's what I was thinking along those lines. I think he's sus, just not in a bad way.
Yeah, I don't think he's bad. I'm not getting that like negative vibe from Eric. I think that he's trying to hide the fact that he is some kind of an intrinsic, because I feel like his signet manifested a while ago, because every time somebody brings up the first year signets, he stays very quiet.
Right. Well, like, okay, what you said, Ethan, also made me think of something else that I kind of latched onto in this part. So there's a scene where Xaden and Brennan are trying to strategize, like, and make decisions about who's going to go where. And Brennan is telling him who all from his army is present in Orisha at the time. And it just so happens that both of his top commanders are too far away to make it to Orisha in time.
I wrote that down. Mm-hmm.
And who, did someone notify the Venin that this would be an opportune moment to attack?
Yeah.
Because the two commanders are not around? And who would know that except for Brennan?
Yeah, because I kind of added that in the same category as who else knew about the shipments of the daggers, right? And Brennan would have been privy to that too.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
So putting the two together, I was like, ooh, that's not a good look for Brennan.
So considering that maybe, and tying it back to what you said, Ethan, is maybe the royals know something more, and maybe that's why Eric didn't take this information to Xaden and Brennan.
Right. Well, he hasn't liked Xaden for a while, but yeah, I can see that.
Well, yeah, he's got reasons for that, and we understand. He killed his older brother.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not that I'm like completely writing off Eric, but just like everybody's suspicious to me now at this point.
Everybody has suspicious to you until we find out the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so they end up all finally getting orders. They go. Taryn's like disappointed, or not disappointed, I'm sorry. He's upset that it took Violet so long. And she's like, well, we have to listen to leadership. And he was like, well, you know what? We should start making our own decisions, which again, pushing Violet into that leadership role that she doesn't want to be in, but it's inevitable that it's going to happen because she bonded to literally a general of dragons. So like, come on, Violet, get with it. Anyways. So I thought it was interesting the way the next chapter started because it has to do with what Eric said and kind of like what happens next. And so the excerpt at the top of the next chapter said, dedicating oneself to temple work isn't just a noble pursuit. Becoming high priest or priestess is the closest most of all will get to touching the power of the gods. The rest are riders. So which means priestesses are, this is what I got from it. Priestesses and priests are more powerful than riders. Is that what y'all got from that?
Or maybe like on the same level of power as riders.
Well, it says that that's the closest they'll get to touching the power of the gods, and the rest are riders, which means like you guys are all just riders. I'm over here close to a god.
That's what I gleaned from that as well. Like or at least that's how they see themselves, right? So,
yeah.
Like there's this step over here, like, oh, like I can almost, I can hold this god's hand pretty much. That's how close I am. And then, but yeah, the rest of that statement, it says, then the rest are riders, when really what we've been reading up until this point is that riders are that close to godhood and the rest are like scribes. The rest are, what are the warriors?
The infantry.
Infantry, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So it's weird to see that distinction between something else and riders.
But
I was like, well, maybe that's just another way of saying that the priestesses and priests can wield,
Well, I was going to say that the reason I thought that was interesting was because, in the middle of Taryn and Violet like fighting off a bunch of wyvern, she spots Theophany. Of course, she's there, right? And so Taryn is hurt, and so she comes face to face with Theophany, and turns out that in Darna, instead of going where Violet told her to go, she was actually protecting the Temple of Dune. And the reason she did that was because, like, hey, the prince told you to go protect it, so that's what I'm doing. And so I thought that was interesting of Indarna to do that, because she doesn't listen to anybody except for herself and Violet. So the fact
she barely
that
listens to Taryn and Violet.
I know.
Yeah.
So that's why
Let
I thought,
alone
like,
Eric. Why are we taking orders from Eric now?
right. And so I thought that was interesting. I'm like, does she know something does she know that they're important to protect? But she ends up protecting the temple and like a bunch of priestesses who were there, and they call Theophany a heretic. And so Violet comes to this like realization that Theophany used to be a priestess of Dune.
Yeah. Well, like, so in the scene when that happened, I remembered that back in the first scene where we get introduced to Theophany at Newhall, Violet noticed a faded tattoo on her forehead. And then in the scene, Violet realized that tattoo was the symbol of Dune. And so I guess that is a symbol that priestesses would tattoo on their forehead.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. And then bringing it back to that entry at the top of the chapter, Jen, that you read out. What does that mean for someone who dedicated themselves to a god?
Right.
And is also potentially a writer? Because, one of my theories is that Benin who wield were once writers.
Right.
And like now she's got this third source of power being a Venin. Mm-hmm. Like that on purpose? That's to like have this god level of power that no one can match.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I wanted to bring up that excerpt, because I'm like, does that mean that Theophany is just that freaking powerful?
Yeah.
Like what?
Or how powerful Violet will become, right? Like, ooh. I think this points out to this is another pointer to the fact that there's a prophecy out there somewhere.
That's
Yes,
right, the
I wrote
prophecy
that
theory.
down too, Ethan. I was like,
Yeah.
is this why Violet, we know, has at one point been to Umbriel before this time in the book?
Right.
Because the priestess there mentioned something about her dedication not being complete.
Right.
And was she brought to Umbriel to be dedicated on purpose so that she could face off and like match and hopefully bring down Theophany?
And why is it that only her, because I'm assuming, this is an assumption, that only her dad knew that.
Right. What is like,
Because, I mean,
what?
Mira would have, I think, said something if she knew about that. Her mom, I would hope, would have said something to her if she knew about that. I mean, she also lied about Benin, but why is it that her dad knows that? And why haven't we gotten to the fact of what happened to her dad? Like, I'm still wondering. Like, I'm so glad we've gotten so much information about Violet's dad, and I love that we've learned so much about him, but what happened to him? And how does this all tie in? Like, there's so many little things happening in these chapters and all these chapters that I feel like haven't tied together yet, but I can feel it getting there.
Yeah. And also in this scene, after Theophany and Violet have some words, and Darna tries to burn her like she did that
that's
Benin
right. Yeah.
in Vescaeth, remember?
Yeah.
And it did nothing to her. Like, she completely unscathed.
I was thinking about that too. I'm like, was that a coincidence?
Like, is it part of her being a priestess that does that shield her somehow from even an Irid's flames?
Because she's godlike.
Or maybe if you just reach Maven, right? Maven or Sage, like maybe it doesn't affect you the way it would. Maybe you're a fully realized Venin, right? Like,
yeah. I don't know, but that
and
was shocking
Darna's
to me
still,
too.
she's still an adolescent, you know, like she's not fully mature. So her power is still growing.
Yeah.
And like the venom that she was able to burn was like at a lower level, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Of venom.
But speaking of Indarna, so I know we have to, though. We have to. So in the middle of, facing off Theophany, I felt like Theophany was about to get them all, right? Because she was like, oh, that's cute. You tried to burn me. Haha, but you didn't. She runs away, really scared, and like just quickly disappears. And as soon as that happens, we actually see Leothan, the Arid that was back in the Isle who wanted to kind of stick around, is there. And he ends up firing up the wards in Orisha, which, oh my God, hallelujah, finally, right? Like, I was so happy. I was like, I knew somebody had to come through because, like, that was going to be so dangerous for them not to have working ward. So I'm so glad he fired the ward stone and that it's all finally, it's all fully functional now. But as he's there, he requests to only speak to Violet and Darna. So he makes everybody else leave, right? And as they're talking, he tells Indarna, we are separated by many generations, but share the same bloodline. Unlike the others you encountered who are of a more distant line, we are of the same den, or would have been had you been raised among us. So that's why he came back, because like Indarna comes directly from his his family. So she's family to him. Yeah. And so I'm sure like that, that he holds her to a really special regard. Like, hey, this is my family and I didn't want to leave her behind. So he shows up, right? But he also says like, it did not sit well with me that you were judged by the shortcomings of others, which I'm like, thank goodness for that, because that was so unfair. Even the dark wielder that you seem fond of, you should be given the chance to learn our ways, to choose our ways. And so Indarna is like really hopeful. She's like, oh, okay, good. That's awesome. Can you stay and teach me? And he tells her no, that she has to go with him. I'll let you guys get to the other parts because I can't.
Yeah, well,
I can't.
Well, at first she's like, no, we can't leave, meaning me, Violet, and Taryn, because they're all bonded.
Yeah.
And then he says, no, like, just you. And then she protests, well, we're bonded. I can't leave them. And then he explains to her, what was it that he said? He says, well, then end it. Bonds are merely magical ties. You are Irid. You are magic. Bend it, shape it, break it as you see fit. And she chose to break it.
And she left.
And she left with him.
And she left quick too. Like
She
she was
did.
gone in an
Yeah.
instant. And
Yeah,
I was
she she did look to Violet, and then Violet did validate her. She said, "I love you, and I want you to feel complete. I want you happy and safe and thriving. I want you to live, even if it's not with me." But like, she still chose to leave.
I get it, y'all. Like I mean, it's like, okay, it's like an adopted child, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like an adopted child who's always been yearning to learn more about their family, wondering why they got left behind, wondering why their family didn't want them. Even if they're in the most loving home ever, and these people absolutely love this child, if they ever had the chance to get to know their actual family, their true parents, where they were born from, they're going to take it no matter what. And so that's what Andarna did here, even though it broke my heart. Because when I saw that, I was like, no. I was like, no. I was like, no. I was like in denial that she actually left.
Yeah, I actually thought this had the potential to happen, right? But I thought it was going to happen the first time that they met. And then it didn't. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're good. I didn't think that they would come back and offer a second time. When it first happened, I was like, I could see it very well being that I didn't think that the unbonding would happen. I didn't think that would happen. I thought they would still maintain their bond. But no, when I read that he was back, I was like, oh, this is about to happen. And then it happened. I was like, oh, that's so sad, because it immediately brought me back to reading New Moon, where Edward leaves.
Oh my God.
And that's exactly what it made me think of.
5 pages of like nothing on the page.
Of nothing. Yeah. And if you're watching the movie, you hear the sad song come in. And Bella's just looking out the window.
And the season's changing.
That's immediately what it made me think of, because not Bella, Violet.
Now you're on Bella.
I know. Because Violet faints, and it's like Bella was in the woods, she just faints and gives out. I was like, wow, that's pretty intense. And then we get to Violet's grief, but I was feeling it right there with her because it was such a shock, because yes, Violet does give her that validation. You've been waiting for this a long time. You go, I want you to be happy. And then she hightails it. She's out there in a quick jiffy. And I understand she probably needed to, or else she would before she would lose her nerve to go. Right. But at the same time, because they're unbonded, you don't hear that inner dialogue anymore. And so you don't know what Andarna is thinking. And so it's a heartbreaker.
Yeah. And okay, so I refuse to believe that this is the last time we see Andarna. My hope, we didn't get to read what her thoughts were after she chose to leave with Leothin. But I really want to choose to believe that she's going to try to convince the rest of the Irids to come back and help. She's been so steadfast about that.
She really has.
So I hope that we'll see her again, and I hope it'll be with the rest of the Irids.
And she's been the only constant to Violet on giving her hope for Xaden, because Terran hasn't been doing that. He's already given up on Xaden the minute he turned. So Andarna has been the only one that's no, we will do this. We will cure him. We will find a way. And so I think so too. I also think that she values her bond with Violet so much. I could see her coming back to reforge it, because Leothin said that that's possible. He was like, well, break it now, and then you can reforge it when you come back if you choose to. But they said years.
That makes me think something else. That makes me think of something else. So I'm going to take it back to the first time we're introduced to Theophany.
Okay.
And she knew that Andarna was an Irid.
Right.
And in fact, that's the first time we hear it, is from her lips. And she also asked Violet in that scene, who chose you first, the black one or the Irid?
Oh, she did.
And Violet didn't answer. But when I read this scene with Leothin, he also asked Andarna, who bonded with Violet first?
But
Taryn or you?
right, because
And then she responded that she was the second to bond with him, because Taryn would not have been able to bond with her if Andarna had chosen to do that
that's
first.
right. Yeah.
But Andarna could, because she's Irid.
Right.
And
Only
she can
Irids
basically
can do
do
that.
whatever she wants.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, by the way, I
What
have
does what does she know?
a lot.
That's,
I mean, she
that's
keeps.
why I'm thinking, like, in these dreams that Xaden is having, that they're wanting Andarna, that she is Andarna. It's either Andarna or Sigil.
I think
I'm gonna go with Andarna.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously Theophany knows a lot. Like, she keeps taunting
Right.
Violet that she keeps saying, like, I have the knowledge that you're seeking. Like, I have it. So
She does, yeah.
Yeah,
that's what she taunts her with. Thankfully, Violet didn't sit like Bella for months. She only sat in her room for 3 days.
4 days, not 4 seasons.
Okay, 3 days. Yeah, exactly. Thank goodness, because I don't know that I would be like, come on, Violet, come on. Because we talked about this before. We're like, Violet would never do what
Right.
Bella did.
Yeah.
So thankfully, it's only 3 days. But, you know, obviously, we get it. You know, she's grieving her bond. She's grieving Andarna. Like, she was a part of her. Which, before we kind of get into the grief, like, does she still have her Dreamwalker signet? It's like she just got it, or she just discovered it, and now she's gone.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, huh, okay, what does that mean for that? Anyways, just a thought.
That was fun while it lasted.
Right? But I love the fact that, like, Mira was the only one that finally got her talking. And so Violet tells her, I was whole and now I'm not. She's really gone. And that was probably the first time she talked in 3 days. Because, like, I know, like, here it kind of talks about, like, people in and out of the room, but she didn't get out of bed. She didn't talk to anybody, not even Xaden. But all it took was Mira getting there, getting her out of bed. Well, not really out of bed, but, like, getting her talking, getting her to just, like, come to it, right? And then Brennan gets upset. I'm like, dude, fuck off. Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, he was like, I told you to get her.
Brennan are just going to be Mira and Brennan. So
I know, but he's like, I told you to get her out of bed, not to get in with her. I'm like, dude, shut up. Like, at least she's awake now and talking. Like, what did you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
and that's
mad
exactly
about
what
that.
Mira said to him.
I was so mad.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to get a sip. But yeah, like, I feel like she's way more understanding than Brennan was here. He was, you know, she tells them, like, hey, the deficit of power has to be staggering, let alone the emotional impact of severing a bond. And then she says, it's not like she broke up with a boyfriend. She lost a whole dragon. And that's huge, because a lot of people die when they lose their dragon. Actually, no,
and
they
even
all
Xaden,
die.
They die. Yeah. Taking it back to that very first line in Fourth Wing, a dragon without its rider is a tragedy, and a rider without its dragon is dead.
Exactly.
Period.
Exactly.
So, and Xaden even tells her, like, no one has ever survived losing a dragon.
Right.
You know, and the only reason she did was because she still had the bond with Taryn. And she even tells Xaden that she understands now why riders die. Like, she says she wouldn't have even had the motivation to breathe if not for Taryn.
Yeah.
That's
and I love
crazy.
Taryn for it too, because he was like, I think he screamed at her to say, breathe.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be alive. And so he
Right.
really grounded her, which I love Taryn. I really do.
I know.
And he's just there for her. Like, he hasn't said anything to her. He hasn't reprimanded her for being in bed. Like, he's just there
Right.
for her. And that's exactly what she needs, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he can feel her feelings. So, like,
Yeah.
he knows the depth of what she's feeling,
Right.
you know? And, like, that would not have done anything for her.
So as Violet is finally coming together, like, she finally decides to get up and shower, and, you know, she lets Xaden help her kind of put herself together. Like, Mira and Brennan start arguing over the grandmother, which I knew there was going to be a significance behind, or not, maybe not a huge one, but I knew it was going to come up again, where they brought up the grandmother, because obviously, you know, Mira went to go visit her. And so I kind of knew, or I think it was you, Stephanie, who said, like, she probably went because she's a little jealous of everything that's happening, because she's kind of feeling left out, right? And so that's exactly what she tells Brennan. She was like, Violet has Dad's books. You have Orisha. I went to the only other living member of our family because all I have are a few of Mom's journals. and there are months missing. And so Mira, I feel like there's a reason why she's been so kind of distant from Violet, is she's kind of putting it together about Violet's dedication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And while they're arguing, she mentions that they spent some time with this grandmother, Niara, just Mira and Brennan, while their parents took Violet away for the summer. And so we're thinking this is when they went to Umbriel and had her dedicated or partially dedicated. And she says this is around the time when Violet's hair started growing in. And it started growing in half silver, half brown. So now we know the origin of Violet's hair. It's because she's been partially dedicated to Dune.
Yeah. And how many times have we said, like, when did he have the time to do this? Like, when did this actually happen? And now we actually have confirmation of it, of when it happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we're putting two and two together. All the while, like, this is Mira and Brennan, like, arguing back and forth. And then they reveal something, like the dedication and stuff like that. And then like, oh crap, Violet's here too. Like, oh, she's overhearing all this and we're pretending like she's not even here. And so then you start getting into how Violet starts reacting and she's like, oh. I think there's a little bit of shock at first and then she's like, nope, that tracks. That makes sense.
It's like, that makes sense to everything I figured out at Umbriel already. Thanks, guys.
Right. Because she had that weird conversation with the priestess at Umbriel. So like she knew there was something there. This just confirmed it for her.
So who was it? I can't remember if it was Mira or Brennan who says that I think it was Mira, that the only reason the dedication was not complete is because they only accept children whose futures are certain, and Violet still had paths to choose from. So they wanted to dedicate her. It wasn't that they stopped it. It was the priestesses who stopped it because Violet's future wasn't certain. And so she said something about the priestess spoke all cryptically, but basically said if Violet chose her future poorly, she could still earn their mentorship, but she'd turn. And then she stopped. And so I was like, was she about to say that she was going to turn Venin, right? And
then, I think so.
And then that parents used to dedicate their infants to a particular deity service when they thought that the touch of a god would help that child. And so I remember one of the chapters, because it wasn't this chapter, it was one of the past chapters on the top had this excerpt that said, and this was written in Lilith's journal, I'm not sure I'll ever forgive him for what he's done to her. And so this made me realize the mom wasn't involved with this dedication at all. It was just the dad. And so the dad, like, did he know that she was going to turn Venin eventually? And so he was trying to dedicate her to stop her. But clearly that wasn't going to work anyways because Theophany's a priestess and she's Venin.
Well, okay, this is getting into one of my theories, but I guess we're kind of there.
The perfect segue into our section of theories and predictions. And I think Steph wants to start us off here. So you go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about this argument between Mira and Brennan, and Mira mentions that her Violet's dedication was not complete because her future was uncertain. Okay. So the prediction she made was, she said the heart that beats for you or within you would do the wrong thing for the right reason, reach for unspeakable power, and turn dark. And yeah, I think Mira and everybody else thought that it meant Violet would turn. But as we all know, it was Xaden who turned. And so Xaden steps in and says, no, actually, it was me. I'm Venin. And that like ends this chapter because Mira gets pissed off that Brennan and Violet kept the secret from her. But what my theory is like, no, I don't think Asher thought that she was going to turn eventually, and that's why he dedicated her. I think this is going back to Theophany and that scene at Dune's temple. I think somehow, maybe it's that prophecy theory, somehow he knows about this prophecy maybe, or knows about Theophany and that she was a priestess, probably a rider because she can wield. And now is Venin. So she has these three sources of power that make her basically unstoppable. And he thought that the only way to defeat a venom like that would be to have someone that could match her power. And how can we do that? We're going to raise Violet to become a rider who is also dedicated to Dune so that she also has that power, and like maybe a Signet that can match her power. But the priestess was the one who made that prediction about her turning venom. Not so like that was post him bringing her to get dedicated. But I think somehow he knew about theophany and thought that this was the way to bring her down.
But he raised her to be a scribe, not a writer. Even though like the whole dedication thing didn't go through, I think it's because he knew that the whole prophecy of Andarna waiting for Violet. Because remember, she said, I've been waiting for somebody with the heart of a warrior and the mind of a scribe. So, like, he raised her to be a scribe, but he knew that mom would step in eventually and make her go into the writer's quadrant, right? So, yeah, I think that the whole prophecy theory is kind of starting to really come together because, like, the dad knew, and that's why he raised her the way that he did, because he knew that she needed to be that, to be able to bond to an Arid, which are so rare. Because I mean, that was his other study, right? Was feather tails.
Yeah. I think we're probably hitting like all around it like we did with her second Signet theory again, because I totally think that y'all are 100% correct, right? But I don't think that mom was excluded as much as we're thinking that she was, because that's the very thing we wonder so hard about in the first one in Fourth Wing is why did she command her to go to the dragon riders instead of the scribe, which she was clearly raised to do? That only makes sense with this theory,
right? That
mom and dad were in on it, right? And I'm going to force you into the Dragon Riders unit now, because that's how you're truly going to discover that you have a heart of a warrior, but you still have the mind of a scribe.
Right.
So it was very intentional that she was raised as a scribe, but then literally pushed into the Riders quadrant.
Very true.
Right.
I think... So getting into my predictions, I'm going to go back to Violet's second Signet.
Okay.
And I think we've all kind of communicated this. I remember us texting back and forth when we all first read this section. I think, because Steph and I were talking about this too, that the only reason, because the Irids were freaked out about the second Signet that Andarna had given her.
Oh, true.
They were like, what did you do? Why did you do it?
Yeah.
They were alarmed.
That's right.
And I was like, when we read about the second Signet, I was like, well, that would be really dangerous to other humans, right? And so, yes, in that regard, that's pretty dangerous. But why are the Irids so freaked out? And I think it's because, this is my theory, that her second Signet not only has the power to work on humans, but also dragonkind. So I think that her dream walking ability, I think she can probably walk into the dreams of dragons.
I thought that too.
Yeah. And that would be really the only reason why the dragons would be so freaked out as to why Andarna bestowed the Signet upon Violet. And I think that's my prediction now, that we're going to get a dual point of view in the next book, where it's going to be Violet and Andarna. I think we're going to get Andarna's point of view. And I think that her second Signet is still around. And the reason that she's going to realize that she has the ability to dreamwalk with dragons is because she's going to dreamwalk with Andarna first.
Ooh, I love that.
I always did say that the fourth book has to be about the dragons. I feel like we know,
and this would be the way to do it.
Yeah. Yep. There's very, very little we know about the Empyrean, and we haven't even began to touch on the dragons at all with these three books. So I 100% think the fourth one is going to be about the dragons. So my theory, I already mentioned the first one, where I thought that if she can meddle in these dreams, will she be able to alter the future by changing the past? So can she go back to when Xaden first channeled and meddle and convince him not to? And that's how she cures him. That's what I think. That's my theory / prediction. The other one goes back to the connection. The other one goes back to what Leothan said about Irids and how their magic how they're magic itself, right? And when he said, bonds are merely magical ties. You are arid, you are magic. Bend it, shape it, break it as you see fit. You know that venom is channeling the the venom are channeling magic straight from the source. It's still magic though, right? So can she change that magic, that everything that Xaden has channeled, can she change that into something good? Because they all,
as a means to cure him.
Right. Because they all keep saying that the channeling straight from the source is obviously what's evil about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of bonding through dragons and channeling from them. But
it creates an imbalance.
But if the Arids are magic itself and they can shape it, bend it, break it however they want, can she change the magic that Xaden has channeled already? That's a thought I had.
Yeah. And she would maybe need to learn to do that.
Well, that's what she needs to go learn from all of these Arids, right? Like, how does she manage her magic? Like, she knows nothing of herself. I mean, she's only been learning the few things here and there. She was like, oh, I think my magic changes when my scales change. Is that true? You know, like, she doesn't know what she doesn't know. I'm just scared that she might learn it too late, because he talked about years and they have like months at best.
Yeah.
So,
well, okay, this kind of ties into a second theory that I'm cooking up. And it goes back to her second signet of dream walking. These dreams that Xaden is having, it feels to me like someone is like creating these dreams to torture him. Like this venom is creating these dreams inside of Xaden's head to torture him, and is somehow using these dreams to influence what he does in real life. Like earlier, it caused him to turn. And now he's trying to get Xaden to deliver her, whoever that is. Violet, Sigale, and Darna possibly. And it's making me think, is this sage, because we know that some venom have signets.
right.
Is this sage also a dreamwalker? And is this something Violet can also do with her power if she learns how to grow her power? Cause people to dream something like this and influence their behavior in real life.
I mean, that would make so much sense. I could so see that being a thing, right? And a common theme that gets brought up in these chapters and like the previous sections a lot is that magic always requires a balance. And so we have the lightning wielder venom with theophany, right? And then we have this possibility that the sage, you know, could have this dream walking ability as well. It does make sense.
Yeah.
And now you have Violet, who is the balance in one person, right? Like she's one person. She's balancing both of these people, or both of these venom. That would be so interesting, and I would love that if that was like the actual case. That's a really cool theory. I hadn't thought about that.
And it ties in with your theory too, Jen, of like, can she manipulate real life by manipulating these dreams?
Right. Well, you said it, Ethan. You said something about influencing, like she can influence people and that's what you said.
Yeah.
So
she has the power to influence.
Yeah. So I can see that. I just want to know more. And we're so close to the end.
Right. So she has the potential to not only just like walk into someone's dream, but to completely recreate it.
Yeah.
Like this, this is a cute dream. I love this for you. Let's make it a nightmare real quick. I'm going to add some monsters over here. Right. Like she has the complete ability to change it. And because her lightning wielding is getting stronger, it comes to like, obviously her dream walking is getting stronger because she's now able to realize, like, when she looked down at Xaden's hand, that's what kicked her out of it. Yeah. That's like, that's not my hand. Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Right.
And so she's getting stronger in that as well. She just didn't know it.
Right.
Yeah. And that made me think of something else while you were talking, Ethan, is like, so Xaden tells Violet that this is dangerous because people can't shield while they're asleep.
Right.
Which leaves their entire mind open to her. And I'm thinking, going along with your theory, Ethan, because like through the bond between a writer and their dragon, we've already seen throughout the book that Taryn knows like everything she's thinking without her even saying it. And he'll respond to thoughts that she has. even when she's shielding him. So are dragons also shielding their riders to protect themselves, their knowledge, the Empyrean, and what, like what they're all about? And if your theory is true, Ethan, that she could also dreamwalk into a dragon's dreams, like, could she also do what the sage is doing to Xaden and influence the whole Empyrean?
Ooh, that's
Which, again, we need to know more about the damn Empyrean.
Yeah, I think we're all right on that account. Like, book 4 has to deal with more of like the dragon side of things.
Yes, please. Honestly. Okay, let's get into the last part.
Okay.
Getting crazy, y'all.
I know.
All right. Well, that wraps up our section over theories and predictions. Next episode is going to be chapters 55 through 60. So make sure you are current in your reading as far as that goes, so you can join in on the conversation without spoilers.
Next time on our Onyx Storm deep dive, Violet has unlocked her second signet. She's a Dreamwalker, which happens to be more dangerous than being a lightning wielder. But with Andarna breaking their bond and leaving to join the other Arids, one question lingers. Can Violet still manifest this power on her own? Meanwhile, Mira finally learns the truth about Xaden being Venin. What will she do with this new information? With tensions rising and the battle ahead uncertain, what's next for Violet and those that she loves? Join us as we dive into chapters 55 through 60.
That's a wrap for Books Between Friends today. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next chapter.